Hiring your first employee is a great sign. Congratulations. But how? Who? When? What? It's okay, my love. You are doing great. Take a deep breath and let me help you get this done. Let's get to work. Hey, my love, CP here again. I see you making money moves. And you know, HR is one of those things that really does give you the example of making those money moves. I mean, after all, you're at a point in your business where you've got to expand, you've got to grow, you've got to add to your team. And HR, I must say, is one of my areas of specialty. I mean, being certified and all. So let's jump in, because these 6 steps are really, really critical when it comes to you actually hiring your first employee. And make sure you stay all the way to the end of this video, because I've got a CP impact tip that is going to handle it all for you and actually get you through the 6 steps that we're getting ready to dive into right now. So step 1 in hiring your very first employee is really simple. You've got to figure out what needs to be done. So I am going to tell you to do a skills dump. And I'm not going to dive into the specifics of a skills dump, because I did handle that already in another video, which I'll link to right here in the cards, where I kind of describe when it's time for you to realize that you're going to scale and how to do that. But a skills dump is really simple, and it's really designed for you to get out all the stuff that as a solo entrepreneur you've been doing all by yourself, so that you can kind of take it, divide it up, and figure out all the stuff that you kind of need to delegate, which is going to guide your first hire, and all the stuff that you kind of need to keep doing yourself because it's your area of specialty and it's what you do in your business. I don't want you to get beside yourself though, because most solopreneurs really are technicians. And that means that you're focused on delivering the product or the service that's specific to your business. Well, you kind of move when you're ready to grow and hire your employees into the entrepreneurial role or the CEO or manager role. And that means that you really do need to dive into a different area that you may not necessarily be familiar with. So HR might be that area, but you got to get all those skills out in order to really get step 1 done. Now, step 2, you've already dumped all of your skills and you know what should be for them, as my other video describes, and what should be for you. Based upon all of the things that you've identified should be for them, it is time to really make a job description or a position description. Now, job descriptions are really important, and it's actually one of the top 10 mistakes that I see employers make when they don't actually have a job description that defines the duties for someone that they're actually bringing on board. And that means you really do have to be specific in order to set the expectations, but to also incorporate accountability down the line and performance reviews, which are really important to functioning effectively from a human resource perspective. Now, job descriptions can be pretty tricky because it's not just a piece of paper that you kind of list a bunch of stuff out. It does contain a lot of different things, and it also needs to have some compliance components. And when I say compliance, people usually get really, really scared, because the fact of the matter is, human resources, growing your business by adding employees, does add a whole layer of legal compliance, human resource management needs, concerns, stressors, all that kind of good stuff. But your job description is kind of that first piece of compliance. I mean, there's lots of things that it really does need to contain. And that brings me to a good point. If you'd like me to dive into the specifics of how to draft and create a legally compliant and effective job description, put that down in the comments below. I will be happy to walk you guys through that in a separate video. But it does need to have things like your job title, the classification of the employee, exempt, non-exempt, and there's a whole bunch of laws and rules and regulations surrounding that. If it's kind of a contract thing that you're looking for, which really doesn't make it a job description per se, it should also talk about the salary grade, who they report to, their start date, essential functions, those types of things should be included. But it also needs to be ADA compliant and EEO compliant, which is a whole different legal type of thing and compliance related thing with HR, which I'll get into if you want me to do that video. So let me know. Step 3 is getting your candidates. Now you have that job description that's going to encourage people who really kind of fit that job description and are interested in that job description to apply for your role. But one of the biggest questions that I get is, how do I find these people? How do I get these people? And there's really lots of various ways, but the two primary ways that you really want to utilize is, number one, posting the actual position. There's tons of online sites out there. And the bottom line is, back in the old day, when I first started my businesses, newspaper articles, newspaper posts were actually a big deal. Don't judge me if I'm aging myself. Now, online posting is really king. And so there's various ways, various avenues, and various places that you can actually post the position in order to encourage and draw the right candidates to it. The second thing that I encourage people to do is to get referrals. And now with social media, with relationships, with networking, with friends and colleagues that you may have worked with, it's a great opportunity to get a referral, because somebody may know someone who's looking for a role. And they may also need to see what your role is, but they'll be able to connect you with some good folks. And then you've also kind of got that social proof behind that person that's being recommended. So posting is definitely a way, because you want to draw that volume in, and you really do need volume in order to be able to make good choices. And then also, obviously, getting those referrals is going to be a great way to get that candidate on board. And that brings me to step 4. Now, you've got a nice pool of candidates that have come in through your job posting and through your referral sources. And when I say a nice pool, I mean a nice pool. If it's one position, my recommendation is to narrow down all of the applications that you've received and all of the responses that you've received down to between 15 and 20 candidates, because you want to have choices. You want to go through the interviewing process, which is actually step 4. You've got to interview your candidates, and you want to go through that process with choice, with the ability to be able to find the perfect person. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, medium-sized business owners, hell, large business owners, get the interviewing process all wrong. And it is a complete process. It involves various steps, which includes kind of creating what your process is going to look like, getting your interviewing team together, training them on what should be composed, putting together kind of real true job interviewing questionnaires and processes, which I really do recommend a 3 to 4 step interviewing process, which includes an over the phone interview, sometimes a couple of face-to-face interviews, and then also kind of a skills assessment or test at the end. But you also want to make sure that you have, as a part of your process, the ability, as you're going through interviewing people, with that job questionnaire, because that job questionnaire kind of keeps you in compliance. You don't want people who are out there interviewing, or even keep yourself on task with asking questions that are not compliant and that can get you into some legal hot water. So creating that interviewing process is important, but you also want to be able to rank your candidates at the end based off of really an objective ranking category. So I guess I'll ask you again, if you want me to dive deep into interviewing processes, go ahead and put that down in the comments, and I'd be happy to oblige. Now, after you've gone through your interviewing process, I always encourage people to finalize things with a top 3, meaning your top 3 candidates. You're going to rank them in your mind, top number 1 candidate that you want, the number 2 candidate that you want, and the number 3 candidate that you want. And then you're going to move on to step 5, which is making a formal offer for employment. You got to make that offer. And I'm telling you to pick 3 because there's no guarantee that your first choice or even your second choice is going to say yes. That's when you kind of get down into the nitty-gritty of talking about salaries, what your budget looks like, what type of role it is that you're trying to fill. And so you want to make a formal offer. A lot of people get this wrong as well. That formal offer really does set the stage and build your credibility as an employer, but it also begins to that documentation process that everybody talks about being so important when it comes to human resources. You want to make a formal offer in a letter, so in a written letter form, and you want to receive formal acceptance from that candidate. That is step 5, and it is a really important step in the documentation and in the recruiting process that you're about to embark upon to hire that first employee. And that brings me to step 6. onboarding. And when I say onboarding, I mean you have to onboard your butt off. The onboarding process is that 1A in that first impression for this employee. And oftentimes I get clients that tell me that they have a hard time with employee loyalty, employee engagement, employees just really getting the job done and feeling as passionate about their businesses as they feel about their businesses. And oftentimes after we get to talking, I realize that it goes all the way back to what their onboarding process did or did not contain. Onboarding is a critical step, and it is a whole separate process in itself. But it is where you're going to establish that loyalty in your employees. You're going to give them the best map and roadmap and blueprint for being successful in your organization. And it really does need to include some very specifics. I mean, in addition to kind of giving them the overall vision and mission and purpose of your organization, getting them on board to the way that you do things, it's also a time for you to collect critical paperwork that is required from a legal perspective so that you can get them set up on payroll, that you can collect those I-9s, you can get those W-4s. You can also potentially, if they're a 1099 contractor, actually get all of their contracting paperwork and their agreements in place. And it really does begin your training process. Oftentimes employers miss this piece, and onboarding actually begins a couple weeks prior to the employee really starting. That's incorporating other members of your team, making sure that your schedule is set up so that you can spend time with them when they first start, making sure that all of your processes and systems are in line so that you can actually give them an operations manual to function from, because you can't sit around expecting people to know how to do things that you haven't told them or shown them how to do. So onboarding is that first step in that critical piece of getting them into the groove of things in your organization, but it's really that sixth and final step in that overall hiring your first employee process. And that brings me to that CP impact tip that I promised you guys in the very beginning of this video. It all sounds very overwhelming. And yes, all 6 steps need to be managed very well. They need to be organized very well. They need to be efficient because you're still a solopreneur. You're still working in your business. You're still delivering products and services. You're still marketing. So you need some help kind of managing that process. And my recommendation is software. There is an amazing software that I recommend to all of my clients and that I actually use in all of my recruiting processes. And that is really designed for small businesses just like yours. And that is Jazz HR. It is human resource interviewing and recruiting management software. It will actually manage your entire process from posting your positions to multiple websites, collecting all of the recruiting information, doing that initial screening, walking you through the interviewing process, capturing all the documentation, and it will carry you all the way through onboarding. And I tell you what, girl, it is cheap. So that's my CP impact tip to kind of get you to that next level. It's going to manage that process so that you don't actually have to hire a whole nother person just to help you actually hire a whole nother person. And I've actually provided you with a link below in the description to that amazing software that's going to get you over that hump and help you with that first employee, but also help you as you continue to grow your team into the future. So that wasn't that hard, was it? You are well on your way to hiring that first employee. As long as you incorporate these 6 steps into what your process looks like and begin to familiarize yourself, you can move forward with what you need to do in order for you to bring someone on board to alleviate that stressor and ultimately give you the freedom that you crave as an entrepreneur. Because until you have leverage, meaning you can have somebody else doing some of the work so that you can continue to grow, add customers, and deliver great service, until you have that, you're really just an employee in your own business being self-employed and not really truly a CEO or entrepreneur. So good luck with that journey. Make sure you subscribe to continue to get all of these amazing tips and tools. You can click that link down in the button, hit that see more so that you can get all the links that we're talking about and see the rest of CPTV to help you out in other aspects of your business. And until next time, my love, bye-bye.